Good afternoon, everyone. A warm welcome to you all. I'm Priyanka Mukherjee, and many of you I see in the audience box, you have been part of previous webinars. So I welcome you all again to this wonderful fraternity of teachers that we have created on this website, on this platform called Teachers of Tomorrow. It has always constantly been the endeavor of Cambridge to seek excellence in education, in research, and Teachers of Tomorrow, I would request all of you, those who have not registered on the platform yet, to go and check it out once. We have endeavored through a platform like Teachers of Tomorrow to foster a community of learning from each other, of learning from experts who we invite week after week on our panel like we have done today. And the whole idea is not only to focus on the theoretical aspect, but also to take away those tips which you can implement in the classroom in your daily life. And the purpose of weekly webinars like this is precisely to continue to make you feel curious, to engage you, to immerse you into becoming a learner once again. To that effect, we are extremely elated to have with us Ms. Deepa Bhushan, synonymous with excellence in leadership, innovation, assessment, and training. She wears several hats with aplomb, a TEDx speaker, recognized as one of the top 100 great people managers and leaders published by Forbes, and a prolific author. Today's topic, I'm sure, will have widespread resonance. How to elevate your teaching, how to master the Cambridge teacher standards for success. So without further ado, I welcome all of you again. And once again, thank you so much, ma'am, for helping all our teachers learn something today evening. The floor is all yours, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Priyanka. Thank you so much for inviting me to this platform to share with the teachers and learn from the teachers. I think we're all, lifelong learners as teachers. And though we move from our profile, so I know of a lot of leaders of schools and heads of schools and coordinators who may have stepped away from being teachers and into the administration space, but still continue to be teachers at heart. So I hope all those who are listening there know that you can elevate your teaching. Your students may change, but you continue to elevate your teaching. So, well, here I go. So I'm going to start off by just... So I don't know if everyone knows, but a teacher influences at least more than 4,000 students on an average during his or her career, which is a lot. I mean, just imagine in life today, we have, even if one person listens to us, it's a lot. But a teacher actually influences more than 4,000 students during his or her career. So when they're influencing somebody to this extent, they need to know the direction that they are moving in, right? And there's a lot that's happening that's required of a teacher in today's times. So if you look at it, professionalism is, of course, the key in today's times. So knowledge, competency, skill, conduct, all this is required from a teacher. So a teacher does this course, which is a B.Ed or any other training that a teacher does, and comes into the field of teaching and realizes there's this completely new world from what I had learned to where I have reached within a school. And how do I bring myself to the highest quality? Because I know that every teacher wants to be the best, wants to be remembered by her students. So she wants to upskill herself, and that's the teacher's dilemma. How do I get there? Who's going to tell me? Where is my teacher? How do I move forward? But one of the things, as we grow older, and the golden rule is that adults are in charge of their own learning. And we must all remember that. So there's no one who's coming with that, baton behind me, or who is going to follow up with me to tell me that, this is what you need to do, or this is the pathway that you need to take. So as an adult, I'm in charge of my own learning, and how do I move forward? So in the work world, you have discussions, of course, with your coordinators, with your heads of schools, but these are discussions after we've had our own reflections. So if anyone wants to read more about adult learning and the rules of adult learning, I've, of course, given a link later, but adults are in charge of their own learning is the first assumption of how adults need to learn. And so teachers need to have some tool to reflect, to understand, how do I know what is the direction I need to move in? And which is why today I'm referring to the Cambridge Teacher Standards, and they can refer to any. This is not, specific for any board. They can refer to the Cambridge Teacher Standards, whether, they are an Indian board or any other national board, any other country board. They can refer to these standards to support them for good quality teaching. Or they can refer to any other teacher standards for them to understand how to upskill myself, how to reflect on my teaching practices, how to identify strengths and areas for improvement, and to set clear goals for professional development, and also improve teaching effectiveness, which is something that we all want. So this is understanding the power of the Cambridge Teacher Standards today. But I'm using that as a reference today, but use any teacher standard, and they have the power to support you, to get you to upskill yourself. So if we look at the Cambridge Teacher Standards, there are 5 domains within these standards. So domain 1 is about teacher values and attributes. Domain 2 is about the classroom culture and environment. Domain 3 is teaching skills and practices. Domain 4 is innovation and improvement in teaching and learning. Domain 5 is about community engagement. So when I move to the next slide, I'm going to be discussing each and every domain a little bit in detail and give you all of your examples for the same. But I have an exercise or an activity that I want everyone to do. So while I'm discussing examples, I would like each one to put down their examples for a particular domain and a standard under that domain in the chat box. And we can have a quick discussion about some later. I won't be discussing each standard in detail, but there are examples for you to understand how to go about assessing your own practice, teaching practice. So often what happens is, whenever we see standards or we see documents, we see these measures that are there, we kind of get overwhelmed. And we think that, this is serious stuff. I don't think I can look into it. But it's actually very simple. And when you realize that you are following a lot of practices, you are able to take these practices forward. You are able to build your skills forward from there, right? So I'm going to explain this by doing the first one with you. So the first standard under the domain teacher values and attributes is demonstrating a shared understanding of the school's vision, mission, and objectives, right? So often we wonder really, how many of y'all, and I ask this question, how many of y'all have actually read the school's vision and mission and objectives and know them very well? And then reflect them in your teaching practices. Do you do that? I can see a lot of thumbs ups coming up. So a lot of you have been doing that, and I'm very happy to know that, right? So some of the examples that you can have for understanding this is, do I, as a teacher, integrate? So if my school's mission states that, we are developing global citizens, do I incorporate international perspectives into my lessons? If my school's goal is to foster critical thinkers, in my lessons, do I ask and encourage students to ask questions and also connect to real world problems? If my school's vision is to incorporate teamwork, so am I teaching the students the value of collaboration and respect during games? So ask yourself these questions. Am I doing all these things? Is it reflecting in the vision and mission? How do I go about doing this within the school? And you'll realize you're actually doing a lot. When you start doing all this and when you start questioning yourself for each standard, is when you will realize that where are the gaps? How do I better my practice? Right? So I am now going to move on to the second standard with you all, and I want a lot of you, each one of you, to put your examples in the chat box. Modeling ethical conduct in interactions with the school community. So, do you maintain transparency with students and parents while assessment results are out? And do you involve students in the learning process? So if a child comes to you and says that, Miss, I'm not happy with what's happening in my examination paper, do you take a step back and say, okay, let's sit down and understand why you've got the marks that you've got, where do you need to work, and how can we move forward? Okay. Promoting fairness by ensuring equal opportunities for all students and treating everyone with respect and honesty in your daily interactions. We do hear about a lot of favoritism in class, right? Maybe there, may not be there, but we do hear about it. But sometimes it's important to question yourself and ask, am I fair? Am I treating everyone with respect and honesty in my daily interactions? So that's a very important aspect with this. I hope I'm seeing a lot of chats coming
Yes,
through.
ma'am.
So personalized feedback, free of bias, that is an important aspect. So the third standard states contributing positively to the wider life and ethos of the school. And that is something that you can easily do by organizing extracurricular clubs, such as, well, I've mentioned an environment club, debating society, but there are so many. Then do you commit to lifelong learning through reflective practice, and not only for yourself, but even for your students? Do you regularly review your lessons, identify areas of improvement, attend professional workshops? Well, if you're here, you're attending a professional workshop. So I'm seeing that you have a commitment to lifelong learning through reflective practice. Do you ensure your students participate in peer feedback sessions, reflect on their work, incorporate suggestions? Do you ensure all this happens within their workspace? So when you're doing project work, when they are doing a written piece, do you get them to say, you've written the piece? Normally whenever we're writing any piece, we have at least 4 or 5 drafts before we send across an email also. Sometimes when we have to send across an email, we go back and forth, we reread it, then we correct it. We don't give children an opportunity for that. Or we'll ask our peers that, okay, can you just go through this one? Do you think this is right? Do we give children that opportunity that they can do it within their work? It's also about taking in feedback, accepting feedback. And if you want to be a lifelong learner through reflective practice, accepting feedback is a very important part of doing so in a positive manner. We normally see any feedback as criticism, but how do we take it in a positive manner? Starts early on in life. And you are role modeling it for children. You are teaching children how to take this forward, right? So committing to lifelong learning through reflective practice. Actually, each and every teacher standard is so important, and when you'll start seeing your practices and measuring your practices against the standard, you'll realize where you need to work. Of course, commitment to well-being for the whole community. As a teacher, that's an extremely important aspect of learning. So implementing mindfulness practices in class, do you do that? We don't just teach a subject, we teach a child. That's something that I always tell teachers, right? So do we do that in class, and we foster emotional support even amongst colleagues, right? The second domain that is there is classroom culture and environment, right? So creating a classroom culture where all students are supported. Anytime I ask a teacher that, are you actually doing this? I always get the answer, yes, of course, I am. Everyone believes they do it. But how do we shift our instructional strategies to cater to the diverse learning needs? Do we ever ask ourselves that? And do you actually write it down? I have 20 children in my classroom. I think this child or these children have a specific learning need or a specific learning style. And then these are the strategies I use to teach these children. Or if my children in a classroom don't get a particular concept, with one technique that I've tried, I don't go on doing the same technique again and again. I try a different approach to meet their needs. So asking yourself these questions is extremely important. Then, of
I want to interject here, ma'am. Sorry, apologies for interruption. Ma'am, we have some wonderful responses pouring in. Just wanted to share quickly one or two, ma'am. So we have a wonderful response from Sabha, ma'am. We spend time getting to know our students' interests and learning styles through informal conversations, sometimes, so that there are no biases. This helps us to design activities that resonate with them and make learning meaningful. That's a wonderful response, ma'am, to your...
Yes, beautiful, Sabha. And really a star teacher. If you're doing this, you are a star teacher.
Just one more, ma'am, quickly in the interest of time. So Sukanya, ma'am, writes, very important to give emotional support to colleagues along with our students.
Very true. Very true. I like, again, and I come back and I'd like all of you to really read up on the rules of adult learning and the assumptions of adult learning. You'll realize that the maximum learning that we have is from our peers. And when you are ably supported from your peers, you are able to perform better. You're able to do much better, which is why it's important to have senior teachers be mentors for teachers who are young. And when I say young in the field. And it's important for senior teachers to have as mentors teachers who are young, because related to technology. So during COVID, what we did was in our group of schools, we had a sharing platform that we created so that senior teachers taught the younger teachers content and pedagogical approaches. And the younger teachers taught the senior teachers about technology and how they could make the most use of it in their classrooms. So very important. And of course, this is when it's in a space that is where there are no barriers. You all are emotionally supported with each other. You're more accepting towards each other. That's when great learning happens. So that's the space that comes from. Thank you, Priyanka, for bringing those chats up. Really lovely ideas, really. Of course, establishing positive relationships with all students to support achievement. I have converted the standards into simpler language. So when you actually go into, and I'd like all of you to go back, and I've given the link, and Priyanka will be sharing the link with all of you to read up on the teacher standards and how to utilize them to support yourself. You will see I have simplified the language as much as possible for you to understand that it's actually very easy. Very easy. It's not such a big deal. We normally have these, what happens is we think this is really tough stuff, especially if I'm asked to establish positive relationships with all students to support achievement. I'm wondering, what do I need to do? What are the things that I need to do that I can ensure that I have positive relationships with all students? Simple examples, and I'm sure all of you all must be typing many more, but positive relationships just come by. So in the morning, when you stand outside your classroom and you welcome each and every child, into the classroom, however the child may be feeling during that day, but you welcome each child with a smile. You've set the tone for forming a positive relation. It's as simple as that with each and every student in your classroom. When a child is in a better frame of mind, they want to work better and do better. So you are supporting achievement. So it need not be very big. The criteria need not be too much. It can be very, very simple to achieve in your classroom. Well, of course, setting high expectation of oneself and students, right? So not being frustrated with it, of course, because I know when we look for perfection, we do get frustrated with it. But when we set high expectations for ourselves and our students, and we're role modeling this for our students also, our students work in that particular direction. So when we start setting academic goals at the start of the term for any child, and could be for any subject, but we guide them along the way, create study plans for them, move them in a particular direction, speak with them about why they are facing challenges, how can we get better, what is the area of support that they need, children are able to do better. We normally do this. I've seen that we normally do this when we come into the 9th and 10th, the board classes. This is when we start setting these high expectations. But let me tell you, it doesn't happen overnight. It is a journey. We need to start early from the lower grades in a positive manner. And you will see that these goals are something that will move forward. And respecting children and positive relationships with children is also about your communication with them, right? And of course, collaborating with our colleagues to develop the curriculum. So working with other subject teachers to create interdisciplinary projects is one area. We do a lot of team teaching. I don't know if all of y'all do, but I always recommend that if you can do team teaching, you can even cut down the time that you take, to deliver the curriculum. Also, meeting with teachers across the grades and doing the vertical progression. Do you actually map out what is being taught in a particular grade? How do I lead it forward? What are the next things that I need to do? Or do you give feedback to the lower grades, what needs to be done? But one of the things is also, we normally expect the lower grades teachers should have finished everything and the child should come ready to me, like, ready in a box, the 2-minute meal that the child should be ready like. But that's not real life. So we need to understand from each other what are the lacunae that the children are facing, what were the challenges at a particular grade, because you have different sets of children and the dynamics shift. So do you do that? Do you collaborate with your colleagues to develop the curriculum, to sharing best practices? Does that happen within your system? Do you have platforms that actually allow for sharing best practices? Do we say, let's take this 1 cup of coffee? Today, we're going to just talk about the good things that are happening within our classroom, some things that I feel proud about. I saw the learning getting impacted in the classroom. Or do we say that, these are the mistakes I think I made. I tried this, but it didn't work for me. Am I missing out on something? Do we have these kind of practices? Do we create these kind of platforms? And if any leaders are in this chat, this is something for you to take forward in your schools, where you create these spaces where in an informal environment, it need not be a formal environment, you're creating these spaces completely. Teaching skills and practice. This we can go through very fast because I'm sure all of y'all will have a lot of examples related to, understanding how students learn and applying that to teaching, moving from simple to complex concepts, using scaffolding techniques. So are you doing all these kind of spaces? Ask yourself these questions. When you're planning engaging lessons, so we all know that children love doing, right? Learning by doing has the highest space. So do you have hands-on experiments that the children are conducting? Then, of course, adapting to the diverse needs of students, modifying lesson plans for children with special needs. And of course, ensuring that your students are ready to learn. So, of course, using set inductions and diagnostic. I know a lot of teachers don't like to do their lesson plans. well, tough work, I know, but I always recommend it. It's only when you're planned, you have your set inductions, you've got, how am I going to take this lesson forward? Are you checking that they're ready to learn? Is when, and you've planned for it, only then does it come in. I have rarely seen that, and I see this after a few years, that teachers go into classes without planning. And then they come back and they say, we haven't been able to kind of get the results or the outcomes that we were looking for. So it's important to check whether your children are ready for that learning to take place. Use effective strategies to motivate, challenge, and extend student learning. Of course, by using different techniques, whether it's inquiry-based, learning by discovery. There are so many techniques that are there today, using technology also. And of course, using effective assessment strategies. So formative assessments are mandate need to be done. So quizzes, all these can be done. And then, of course, managing classroom time effectively and ensuring minimal disruptions. Classroom routines are very important. We normally don't spend, the primary years do, and the preschool years, the teachers end up spending a lot of time on classroom clear routines. Even how to use the washroom is something that is done. But the moment they come into middle school, we forget all this, which is so important to do, because these classroom practices, these routines actually take off the cognitive load for children. And they are able to manage their spaces very well. So it's extremely important to continue with these clear routines and having structured spaces of learning, techniques of learning for students. It just ensures that they are able to perform better. So while I'm stating all these things, you're asking yourself the questions: do I do it? Do I do it? Do I do it? That's your space to work with. So of course, innovation and improvement in teaching and learning. And of course, here, reflective practices. So do you look at student performance data? How many of you analyze the assessment data and say, okay, I've taken a class test on this chapter. The performance is not great, so I need to rework this chapter. Use varied teaching strategies to promote problem solving and critical thinking. And of course, use digital technologies to extend learning. I think the COVID time brought in a lot of digital technologies, and we've used so many. I've just named one or two here, but there are so many platforms that you can use. And we know that tech children are the ones who are leading the way. So, and of course, it engages them too. Tech also allows for individualized learning. And I think we must make the most of that in this space. And of course, engaging with research to apply new approaches in classroom. In today's time, we're seeing that neuroscience is bringing in a lot of new discoveries related to how children learn and what works for them. So a simple thing like, earlier we used to not allow children to drink water again and again in classrooms. But it says now that if the brain is not hydrated, right, it cannot understand and it cannot work ahead. So it's important for us to allow children to drink water in the classrooms. But to do that, we must also have certain classroom routines in place. So simple things like this, but ensuring that you are updated on the latest researches that are happening. And of course, the fifth domain, which is the community engagement, which is involving parents to support student learning, right? So of course, holding regular parent-teacher conferences, providing resources to support learning, engaging with the wider community to contribute to the school's mission. So of course, you have partnering with local businesses or organizations to create internship opportunities for students, bringing in guest speakers to talk to children. So there are so many things that can be done with the community. And of course, encouraging student participation in the community to develop responsible citizens. It's a must. When you look at all the boards and every board asks for community service as a part of its space, CBSE has the SEVA program that is there also. So we must ensure that this is integrated in each year's curriculum, not like a one-off thing, but something that's done on a regular basis. And you must ask yourself, are you integrating, I'd say, opportunities for community service projects within the curriculum, within the academia that you're teaching? And establishing professional relationships with colleagues from other institutions, because we learn best from our peers. And when we do share, we had an amazing subject cafe at Pune just this weekend, and I was attending. I sat in a lot of classes and in a lot of subjects, and the kind of learning that I saw happen amongst peers, because the cross-sharing that happened about challenges that teachers were facing and about the learning, the best practices that they were discussing was amazing. So extremely important to establish professional relationships with colleagues. Even from other institutions, from other boards, there's always cross-learning that happens. Yeah, so how do we go about doing it? Like I said, how do I do it? How do I do it? So keep it very simple. And it is very simple. So one thing that you can do is choose at least one standard in each domain, either on a monthly basis or a weekly basis. I mean, you don't need to kind of have too much. Just whatever you can deal with. I've given you as one standard. Put it up in your staff rooms or in front of your desk. If you're doing it as a collective space, you put it up, in your staff room, and you ask yourself, where do we apply these standards? What are we good at? And what do we need to work on? When you start asking yourself these questions is when your answers will come through of how you need to chart your own growth. Like I said, adults are in charge of their own learning. No one's coming to tell you. You need to reflect for yourself. So this is a simple way of doing it. And of course, your self-work, your individual reflection of your practices. What are the practices that help my students? What are the practices that make it difficult for my students to learn? You must ask yourself these questions. And of course, Cambridge has also given us certain tools, which is the teacher self-reflection survey. I've put in the link here. So, all of you can go onto that site, onto that link, and, try it out for yourself. See what it has to say about you yourself as a teacher. Because how I see myself, how my students see myself, how my coordinator sees me, how my peers see me, and what I actually do is very different. So, huge world of difference. Let's see what the teacher self-reflection survey has to tell you about your practices. Right? So how do I start reflecting is an important space. So how do I become the star teacher? I want to be very good. So one of the ways that you can do it is, start a reflective practice journal where you keep writing. Okay. And now if you don't want to write, of course, there are audio notes, and revisit them. Another thing that you can do is record your lessons and watch them back without any performance stress. Because the children can't tell you what you're doing wrong. The only thing that will happen is that the children stop engaging in your classrooms, right? So often when we do teacher observations, we've seen sometimes the children don't pay attention, and, the teacher's unable to understand why. And we've seen a practice that has happened in classrooms where teachers are writing on the chalkboard and talking while they're writing on the chalkboard. And it's such a simple thing, because the children can't hear the teacher. They get disengaged, right? And they don't pay attention. It's as simple as that. So sometimes record your lessons and watch them, and you'll realize what needs to be changed within your practice. Identify your strengths and areas of improvement. For example, after you reflect on the standards, you might realize that you need to incorporate more formative assessments to better track student progress, rather than have only one summative assessment at the end of the term, and then you realize that your children don't know what needs to be done. So identify your strengths and areas of improvement. Yeah. Also, as heads, you can facilitate discussions like I spoke earlier, but even you as teachers can form a group and create a platform where you can reflect on your responses, review analysis in a safe environment. Feel free to talk. Like I spoke earlier, sit with that cup of coffee. And even if you make a mistake or something didn't work, it's okay to talk about and say, what do you think I could have done better? And share ideas for improvement and growth. Extremely, extremely important. And then focus on your collaborative learning, and create actionable plans. So often we have so many discussions and we just leave the discussions there. And nothing happens after that because we go back into our routines. And, like today, you're attending the workshop. I'm sure with what I've said and what you're seeing in the chat box, there are so many ideas that are coming up. But you've attended today and you're going to go back. 2 days, you're going to feel very good and you're going to say, okay, this is something that I'm going to do. But the third day, you get back to your normal spaces and you say, okay, this is done with. I don't want to do anymore, or I've forgotten about it. But no, you need to create an actionable plan for progress. If you are looking for growth, you need to do that. And as a part of that actionable plan for progress, you must develop your own personalized professional development plan using the standards as a guide. You must do that. This is my growth story, and you must put that down. So could be, you could actively engage in learning opportunities, such as the Cambridge PDQs, or you might say, okay, I need to know more about digital learning tools. So let me look forward, or I need to know about AI. So let me find out something related to AI. But you're charting your own growth in this space. And that's something that's also important. So draw your vision map for yourself to become a star teacher, right? And of course, that's where you are a star teacher. You want to be a 3-star, 4-star, 5-star, 7-star, whatever star teacher, but that's in your hands, right? Because you are in charge of your own learning. So we say that a teacher who reflects, seeks feedback, implements new ideas in their classrooms, and pursues professional qualifications to stay ahead is actually a 3, 4, 5, 7-star teacher. As you build yourself, you grow yourself, you create your own journey, is when you move ahead. So I have shared a lot of the resources that I have referred to also, as well as maybe something that you would like to read up on. Very interesting, even YouTube links are there that you'd like to read or listen. You can do that. Okay, so I can see that Ms. Sahab has said kids decide star teachers. Very true. If you've got them engaged, you're taking them forward, and that's when you become a star teacher. So, well, thank you very much. I hope it has been an engaging session for all of you, and I hope you've had some take-backs from this session. So, Priyanka?
Yes, ma'am. And what I would do, and I would request my colleague is to share today's chat with you, because in the last more than 20 webinars that we have planned on this platform, the kind of engagement and the kind of comments that we have had today has been truly remarkable. The comments that have poured in, ma'am, in the interest of time, I could not share even 1% of them with you. But I think it would be wonderful for you to even look back at the kind of engagement this elicited, the conversations that were elicited around today's discussion. So teachers, before I thank ma'am, I would like to thank all of you for just sharing and creating a space of helping each other. And I see that the comments have been, reverted by some other colleague of yours. So it's just a wonderful dynamic space of teaching and learning happening, ma'am. Just to, I want to thank everyone for that.
Thank you. Thank you to all the teachers.
Yes, ma'am. And ma'am, thank you. I mean, I will thank you later, but I think today's session really garnered the kind of immersive experience that we have been looking for, because the comments are just pouring in, ma'am. I mean, you can see it for yourself, ma'am. It's pouring in. In the interest of time, let's quickly move to the Q&A. So we have a question, ma'am. We can accommodate only a few in today's session. So how motivate oneself when you feel nothing is moving along as per your expectations as a teacher?
Well, sometimes you just need to take a deep breath and be kind to yourself. Yeah, things will fall into place, and they do. And maybe you need a different approach. So sometimes we need to meet up with people who are engaged and energized further. Go watch other people's classes and meditate. It's a must. So, well, that's for another session. But I always tell teachers, looking after yourself is extremely important. There's a lot that we give. There's a lot that we give. And if we don't take care of ourselves, then we don't feel energized enough and nothing seems right. But know that what you do, and I go back to my first slide, which is what you do, no one can do. You influence the life of so many children and you create purpose for them. And that's your purpose. So never forget that. You bring in change. Not many people can say that they can do that. Right? Believe in yourself, things will fall in place.
Thank you, ma'am. That's such a wonderful, deep thought, ma'am. I move to the next question. How can the Cambridge teaching standards be reimagined to address the different challenges in the classroom, then focus on digital literacy, emotional resilience? How do we focus on all these by reimagining the Cambridge standards of teaching?
So you don't actually need to reimagine the Cambridge standards. The Cambridge standards currently are open for you to decide which direction you want to move in with them. And they have scope. So it's a very wide scope. So any standard allows for a wide scope and is evolving with the changing times. So if you'll go through the Cambridge standards in detail, you'll see that they have the scope for all these areas that you've spoken about. So you just need to engage with them more deeply.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think just a nutshell of the comment, ma'am, that has come, that we need to have more sessions of this kind of nature. This is a comment from Dr. Singh from British International School, Jaipur. So that says a lot, ma'am. And ma'am, just one last question, ma'am. It's already 6 o'clock. So how does a teacher foster an inclusive space for all kinds of learners? An inclusive space for all kinds of learners.
Well, the first step is to identify the different learners within your classroom. That what are the kind of learners that I have? And you do have learners with special needs also. The second is the planning of your lessons. You bring in different opportunities. So, whether you're looking at the multiple intelligences, whether you're looking at work, you're looking at all the different types of learners, and you say, how do I ensure that my lesson reaches out to each aspect? So when, let me explain it in a simpler manner. So say you're teaching an English lesson, or you're teaching grammar. Yeah. So if you're teaching grammar, you can teach it through music, right? Rhythmic learning, that's when children do. Remember all the rules. You can teach it even through science. When the children are writing about a demonstration, they can mark out within that space. The children, while talking with each other, interacting with each other, can correct each other's language. And that's something that they can do. So you have to have different approaches within your classroom. Also, when you are accepting of all your learners, the children in the classroom are. You're teaching them that. So it's extremely important, your communication, whether verbal or non-verbal, is very accepting of all types of learners, and no one is pulled up or pulled down for even, giving an incorrect answer or giving a correct answer. So that needs to be done.
Ma'am, I think the session can easily go on for another hour, the kind of questions pouring in, the comments pouring in. However, what I would request the audience is, if you have further questions, I have shared the links with you. you can reach out to us. You can write in to us. I'll share the queries with ma'am and try my best to come back to all of you. That's one thing. And ma'am, the key takeaways for me as a learner, as a perpetual learner, is when you talk about holistic well-being, of the colleagues, of the peers, of the learners, that's a fundamental takeaway for me. And the importance of feedback and the importance of teachers engaging in lifelong learning for themselves. So, ma'am, overall, a lot of importance and stress given on creating a positive space and holistic learning. So, ma'am, on that note, I think I would assure everybody that the recording of the session will be uploaded on the Teachers of Tomorrow website and on YouTube as well, Cambridge YouTube. So thank you again, everybody, for joining in, for contributing, for making this such an immersive experience for all of us. And ma'am, thank you so much. I think you can understand from the overall conversations that how much of a positive impact and how much of planting that seed this conversation that we had today with you has done. So thank you so much, ma'am, for doing this for Cambridge, for doing this for us, and hope to have you again on a similar or a different topic in the days ahead. And thank you, audience, for joining in. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Priyanka. Thank you so much for having me here. I can see a lot of hearts and thumbs ups. Thank you very much to the audience for today. Thank you.
Thank you.